Hi, I'm Jeremy. Welcome to Live Wire Review. Today we have the new 2024 Hyundai Kona Electric with the 64.8 kilowatt hour battery. Well, stay tuned, let's get into it. So as usual, I'm going to start off talking about range. That's the one thing that everybody wants to know about when talking about electric vehicles. This one is officially rated to have a 420 kilometer range. Now I have no doubt that we can beat those figures in the summer, but I looked up some of the figures and they're a little bit surprising. So when you're driving around the city, you can expect to see 397 kilometers worth of range. And if you're driving on the highway, you can expect to see about 319 kilometers worth of range. So some of the dimensions of the car has changed as well. It's actually 171.5 inches long with this new model, and the wheelbase is 104.7 inches. Now, what's interesting is they're actually claiming better range of this vehicle, and I believe that may come down to the coefficient of drag. This one is a 0.27 coefficient of drag, rather than the outgoing model sitting at 0.29. So this is an all-new vehicle, yet there's a lot of things that are still shared with the old model. This one is a 150 kilowatt motor in the front, but it has been detuned. It does no longer puts out 291 pound-feet of torque. They've actually detuned it down to 188 pound-feet so that you don't get the wheel spin off the line that the old model used to. And they've actually added some of the creases from the Ioniq model just to make it look more in line with their other electric models. You'll find pixelated things around the vehicle just to remind you that it's an electric car. Now, one of the nice features that they added this year is the vehicle to load feature, and I'm really impressed with that. It means that you can back up your house. It puts out about 1.7 kilowatts worth of power, so you can easily run a coffee maker, a microwave, or something, maybe when you're out camping. I think that'd be a really useful feature. You're still going to find single pane glass on the Kona, unlike in the Ioniq series where they use the double pane glass for a little quieter ride. But we did take this for a drive, and I have to say it's pretty quiet in here compared to the old outgoing model, and it has fairly normal car-sized tires on it, so they should be pretty easy to maintain when you have to replace the tires. One thing they did change here is instead of using a button for their lock system, they actually made it a touch-sensitive door handle and then a touch-sensitive button on the outside of the handle. So that's small changes right there. They changed to a panoramic glass sunroof in this one, so it is a bit bigger than the outgoing model. It still comes with heated and cooled seats inside, and of course a heated steering wheel, one of my favorite features of all time. Now, let's take a look at that storage space in the back. Well, I'm here at the back end of the 2024 Kona Electric. As we know, the outgoing model had about 543 liters of usable space with the seats up. This is quite a bit bigger. This is 722 liters with the seats up, and with the seats folded down, you get 1,803 liters of space, and the outgoing model only had 1,297. So it's far bigger than the old model was, and that's because they stretched out the wheelbase a little bit, gave a lot more room for the passengers, and with the seats folded down, you're actually into that passenger space. That's why it's so much larger. Now, just to compare, we were looking at the old 2015 Tucson, and the 2015 Tucson actually had very similar space to this. So this car has actually gotten quite a bit bigger over the years. And there is some more usable space below this cover, as there always is. They put this cover in here so that you get a flat loading floor, but you can always put it down if you need more space. Okay, I'm in the back seat of the 24 Kona Electric right now. It is quite a bit bigger than the outgoing model. I have lots of room for my legs, lots of room for passengers. As usual, you're only going to fit 2 car seats in here, but there is room for my head. There's actually about an inch or two for my head, and I'm about 6'1" inches tall. Now, I find it kind of funny back here. I've seen in other videos that people actually have heated rear seats. This is the ultimate model here, and I'm actually surprised to see that there are no heated rear seats in the back of this one. What you get in the back here is 2 USB-C ports, and that's about it. Well, here under the hood of the Kona Electric, they've added a frunk due to popular demand. It's only a 27-liter frunk, but it is a nice space to put your charging cables. There's a net inside here, and it's actually lighted too, which is a nice addition. Now, one thing I noticed as a technician is they've actually only got one cooling system on this vehicle, and I'm very happy to see this, and it has the pink coolant. Now, this has never given us trouble here at Hyundai, so this is something that I would highly recommend. It's a very simple vehicle. It's going to be very cost-effective to maintain. Still has your normal 12-volt battery up here and your blended brake booster. Well, that's all there is to see under the hood. Let's go for a drive. I'm in the 2024 Hyundai Kona Electric. We've all been waiting for this car to come in, and it just came in last night. I'm actually on the PDI road test right now, and I'm going to give you my driving impressions of this vehicle. We've already talked about the size and the cargo space and the range and everything like that. So on this drive, we're going to talk about what's different inside and what the driving dynamics are like. So to start off with, it comes with a much larger sunroof than it did before. It actually has that large panoramic glass roof here that opens all the way up. So I don't have an official 0 to 60 time, but I peg it somewhere in the 7-second to 7.8-second range on this vehicle. It's actually a slight bit heavier. I think the old outgoing model was about 3,800 pounds. This one is sitting around 4,000 pounds. I just took the gross vehicle weight and subtracted the amount of payload that you could travel with. So first impressions in here, I'm noticing the fit and finish in Hyundai vehicles, it just gets better with every model. This is borrowing things from the Ioniq series. It has the Ioniq shifter, it has the Ioniq style climate control, and of course your physical buttons. And the fit and finish in here is just incredible. They still use some hard plastics, as we know, but Hyundai's vehicles are very well built. Everything in here is very quiet. It's much quieter than the older model. They seem to have sealed it up. They've put some more soundproofing in different areas of the vehicle in order to make it a quieter ride. So sitting here in the driver's seat, I am in the Ultimate model here in Canada. We don't have the power liftgate as we mentioned before. We do have a heads-up display, and I do like this heads-up display a lot better than the old outgoing model. There is no plastic sheet that slides up across the windshield. This one is displayed prominently on the windshield with clear, easy-to-read font. The wheel size is a little bit bigger than before. It has a tiny bit more ground clearance. You were looking at about 6.2 inches with the old model, and this one is sitting around 6.9 inches. So that'll be better for the winter weather. Albeit though, this is still a front wheel drive model, so you're not gonna get that all-wheel drive performance in the snow. But a 1 inch bigger diameter on the tires will make a big difference when it comes to traveling through the winter weather. So as usual with Hyundai vehicles, it has a host of safety features. It has the blind spot monitors, it has the radar guided cruise control, it has a 360 camera, which is actually new for this model. And what they have done here is, though, if you've got the old model and you're going to trade it in for the newer Kona, they switched the sides on the steering wheel for the cruise control. The cruise control buttons are now on the left side of the steering wheel instead of the right side. So for me, it's a little bit of a learning curve, because if you drive the Ioniq 5, it's on the right side. If you drive the Ioniq 6, it's on the left side. And now in the Kona, it's on the left side as well. So it's a little bit tricky for me when I get out of one vehicle and get into another, but most people should get used to this fairly quickly. And just like the outgoing model, this one has an automatic climate control system. If you were going to drive an electric vehicle from Hyundai, I highly recommend you use the automatic mode. And that's because it uses a humidity sensor up here by the mirror, and that actually keeps all the windows clear. It also makes the best use of the heat pump at all times. So if you use the automatic mode, the humidity sensor is going to pick up on any fog, and it's going to clear the windows for you. If you were to drive around in defrost mode, you'll find that it uses up to 6,500 watts to keep the windows clear, especially when you first take off. But if you leave it in automatic mode, it starts around 3,000 and drops to about 1,800 watts. And when the car's really warm, you're sitting around 500 to 800 watts. So you can really extend your range in Hyundai vehicles because of their incredible heat pump technology. While I was under the vehicle and looking through the specs, I also noticed that the reduction gear is a completely different design than the old outgoing model. The outgoing model just used some gear oil and a reduction gear. This one is using, I believe, automatic transmission fluid. I will check the specs on that when I get back to the shop, but it said it was about 2.6 liters of fluid. I had a look under the vehicle, and there is a transmission pump on the side of that reduction gear. So I believe they mitigated some of the problems they might have been having with the reduction gear by changing it to a transmission fluid cooled style system instead of the just the reduction gear with no cooling system. Maybe it gives them a little bit more heat that they can draw for the heat pump. They would just add an extra device that creates heat that they can warm the cabin with. So speaking of maintenance in these vehicles, basically you have to service the brakes once a year. If you live in a snowy area where there's a lot of road salt being used, there is the one coolant loop, which I bet you is going to have a very long life because it is that pink coolant. If I had to reference the older model, you change it around 240,000 kilometers. Whereas the blue coolant, you actually have to change around 60,000 kilometers. So luckily you have the cheaper coolant in this car. This is going to be a very economical vehicle to drive. Driving impressions when it comes to the suspension, it is very smooth and refined. You don't feel all the little tiny bumps in the road. They're a little bit more damped, especially more than a Tesla vehicle. The Tesla vehicles, you feel every single crack in the road because it's a very sport-tuned suspension. This one is very soft, so it's not going to have the problem that the Ioniq 6 has. The Ioniq 6 has a fairly stiff suspension because it's a lower car, so it actually affects its braking ability. This one is not going to have that problem. It is a front-wheel drive model again, so it's going to have a little bit of lift in the front end. And Hyundai's suspension has not been known as like a sports car suspension. This is a very comfortable family cruiser. You are not going to be taking this to the Nürburgring. This is a very comfortable family car. and the suspension reflects that. It's smooth, it damps the bumps, it works well, and from what I've seen from the engineering under here, it's going to last for a very long time. There is no interesting bits, there's no CV shafts built into the wheel bearings. Everything is going to be very inexpensive to fix in the future. So if you're looking for an economical car to drive, this is definitely it. By the way, I'd like to thank Bourgeois Hyundai in Midland for lending me this vehicle for this road test. I really appreciate it. Give their sales team a call if you're interested in this vehicle. It's actually for sale on the lot right now. I'll just put the phone number down below. And I've noticed that Hyundai seems to raise the bar when it comes to interior creature comforts. We of course have heated and cooled seats in this one, being the ultimate model. We have that beautiful sunroof. We have these 12.3-inch screens borrowed from the Ioniq series. We have the shifter with the nice trimmed materials on it. Steering wheel feels excellent in my hand, and the 4 dots don't look as strange in this one as they do in the other vehicles. As we know, the 4 dots on the steering wheel is actually Morse code for the letter H. So it's just their creative way of putting the little blocks and pixels into this vehicle to make it more unique and interesting, and let you know that their new design features are out there. So I do like one thing on the HVAC button here. They've made it just like the other Hyundai vehicles. They use the automatic mode, and they have 3 different settings for that. So that automatic mode, if you don't like the fan blasting, you can always turn it down. Okay, I'm just pulling back into the dealership. We're going to wrap up our thoughts on this vehicle. Stay tuned. Well, that brings us to the end of this video. So I'd like to run over some of my thoughts on this car. I like some of the updates. I like that it comes with a vehicle to load option now, so you can actually use it as a backup generator for your house. Light loads at least. You can run a toaster, coffee maker, things like that. And I think that's pretty cool. It's something that's missing from the older Kona. A lot of people are going to like the extra space that's allowed in this vehicle. I feel cars are getting a little bit too big. I like the older, smaller Kona, but most of you are probably going to like that this has more space. Now, when you compare this to things like the Ioniq 5 and the Nissan Ariya, especially the base model Ariya, this is still a good contender because it's got about 400 kilometers worth of range, whereas the Nissan Ariya, I tested it, it's about 295 kilometers worth of range in the base model with the front wheel drive. So this is still the better buy. It also has an A-class heat pump, whereas the Ariya has a B-class heat pump. So this wins hands down when it comes to the heat pump, when it comes to the range, and I believe the size. I like the size of this car. So would I recommend it? I would definitely recommend this car. But I'd probably recommend that you get a lower model rather than the Ultimate package. I don't feel that the extra frills of the Ultimate package are always worth it. If you're looking for an economical car that's going to be cheap to maintain, this is the one to buy, but just maybe go for the lower trim, unless you want all those extra features. But then you could always go for the Ioniq 5 and the Ultimate package. So, well, that brings us to the end. If you found this video helpful, maybe give us a like, subscribe to the channel, see what we're doing next, and thanks for watching.